after Turkey's coup attempt, the backlash. Even though the government says only a tiny fraction of the army took part in last Friday's uprising, so far authorities have suspended or detained close to 20,000 soldiers, police, judges, civil servants. There's also reports of TV and radio licenses that have been yanked. More purges to come for anyone associated from near or afar with the president's friend-turned-foe, U.S.-based cleric Fethullah Gulen. Are Gulenists really behind the coup attempt that left more than 230 dead? How strong a backlash? Shooing off EU claims that the purges seemed long planned. President Erdogan's supporters are rallying every night at the same Taksim Square where the Gezi Park protests of 3 years ago defied the Islamist-rooted AK party. They're calling for the reinstatement of the death penalty. A red line, say European leaders, if Turkey's EU membership bid is still serious. Now, as for the man himself, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who after trying to block dissent on social media, took to Facebook Live to address the nation during those critical hours of the coup attempt, he's pushing for constitutional reform still and a stronger presidency. Will he now get his wish, or will he wind up burning his bridges? Today in the France 24 debate, Turkey's purge, and we'll be joined from Istanbul by Galip Dalay of the SETA think tank from the southern Turkish city of Adana, Gökçe Piskin, member of the opposition CHP party in parliament. Also with us here in the studio, Emre Demir, editor of the Gulen-backed publication Zaman France, the French edition of Zaman. Thank you for being with us. And from Brussels, former EU ambassador to Turkey, Marc Pierini. Welcome back to the show, the France 24 debate, or you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. Before we go to our panel, let's begin with correspondent Jasper Mortimer. He's in the capital. Jasper, tell us where you are.
I'm in Ankara. The Parliament building is 200 meters behind my right shoulder.
Let's start with the latest, Jasper. The government demanding the resignation of all 1,577 public university deans. And as the Prime Minister toured the damage from the bombing of the Parliament building you pointed to, his government is demanding that the United States hand over Fethullah Gulen. Can you remind us, who is Fethullah Gulen?
Fethullah Gulen is a Turkish cleric who has lived in the United States since 1999. He espouses a moderate interpretation of Islam. He believes in dialogue with other faiths. He met Pope John Paul. He's met the chief rabbi of Israel. He's rich, and his commercial empire runs numerous schools and media. He was an ally of Erdogan until they fell out in 2013. Since then, Erdogan has accused him of subversion and terrorism. But so far, Turkey has not managed to back its demands for his extradition with any evidence of Gulen having committed a crime.
What do we know about the coup plotters at this point?
We still know very little. You know, the government says Gulen was behind it, but it has not yet produced any evidence of any communication between the plotters and Gulen. Nor has the government said who the chief villain in Turkey was. We still don't know who was the #1 coup maker in Turkey. It seems as if the coup makers were commanders in the Air Force and the Army just below the General Staff, because they had to kidnap the chief of the General Staff and several of his colleagues. Today, the General Staff announced on its website that it had got wind of the plot about 6 hours before the coup attempt began, and that enabled it to take certain steps. Governors in certain provinces and police chiefs in Şırnak, Malatya and Kayseri moved fire engines and other utility vehicles onto the runways of their local airports and air bases to prevent military transport planes from flying to Ankara with more troops. And this would explain why there were too few troops in Ankara to take over the government buildings, such as the parliament and the broadcast centres. This would explain why the coup attempt came across as being half-baked.
It came across as being half-baked. Many thanks for that, Jasper Mortimer. I'm going to now turn over to our panel. Let me begin with you, Galip Dalay, in Istanbul. In your mind, who are the coup plotters?
Well, I think there isn't any discussion about this, about who are the coup plotters. It's not only about governing AK Party. There isn't any discussion as to who are the coup plotters among the mainstream media. There isn't any discussion about who are the coup plotters between the political parties, all of them within the parliament. That includes the Turkish nationalists. That includes the Fierce Pro-Kurdish Party. That includes the secular CHP. That includes the vast majority of society. The coup has been spearheaded by the Gulenists, and they might have other addition from other groups that needs to be investigated. But in terms of who was the leading group, who was the spearheaded it, I don't think that anyone has debate about this within Turkey. This is not, the question of who is the coup plotter is not something that people in Turkey is discussing it.
What makes you convinced of that?
Well, because a historical context, when you situate this issue within a historical context, within what's going on in the last 2 or 3 years, and within the big in a sense big reshuffling of the army, big reshuffling of the military that was expected within the upcoming Supreme Military Council meeting that was scheduled for the August 2016. And there we know that name of the 1,700 people related to the Gulenists were on the table. And we also know that an investigation was prepared to be launched against the Gulenist presence within the military and also within the judiciary was in making. So in a sense, this was a preemptive strike by the Gulenists to stifle what it thought that was coming.
All right, let me turn to Gökçe Piskin of the CHP, Member of Parliament. Do you agree with that it was definitely Gulenists who did it?
I think the situation is very blurry right now, and without the investigation, it is very hard to tell exactly. We have to be careful with the situation because the area is very blurry. But at the same time, there's clear evidence, like the Supreme Military Council meeting that was about to come can be shown as one. Also, after the 17th and 25th of December bribery and corruption operation in Turkey, it was very obvious that there was a clash of interest at the very top of the government. That was very clear. So that brings us to the situation where the coup might be related to the Gulenist movement, which had a very, in the media, it was very obvious and it was very clear that
sorry,
they
just
had
for people who aren't Turkish, when you say a clash of interests at the summit of the government, who's involved in that clash of interests?
Well, actually, before the 17th and the 25th December bribery and corruption operation, it seemed like the sympathizers of the cleric Gulen and the the supporters of the main party, the ruling party, they seem to go very interrelated. They really seem to support each other in many levels of in many institutions of Turkey. But after the operation, there came a time where it became very obvious that the sympathizers of Gulen and the sympathizers of the ruling party, they had a very severe clash. And this was the operation was a very clear evidence of that.
Gökçe Piskin, in the past, there have been many coups, unfortunately, in Turkey, and it's always been ultra-nationalists. There's no way it could be them?
Well, actually, as a social democrat, we paid a lot of price during those coups in the history of Turkey, and we are very familiar with the ways and the ends and the results of coups. Unfortunately, but at the time, you can never. This is not very clear, because the nationalists, the Kemalists in the army, had been cleared in the past, and sympathizers of Gulen was appointed by the government, by the ruling party, to those positions, even without the ability, the capacity. Meaning, like, there was very fast appointments. When you look closely to the appointments in the army, you can see that there was a clearing of the nationalists, and then appointment of the Gulenist or Gulen sympathizers or supporters, so to say. So it's there might be an involvement, but it's very weak. It's a very weak choice.
All right, so we have one panelist saying it's definitely Gulenist, one panelist saying it could be Gulenist. Emre Demir.
Well, it's definitely the popular theory. A lot of people believe in this theory in Turkey, and he's right. This is the popular sentiment, but the accusation is really serious. It's not like, Gulen is the default scapegoat of the Erdogan's regime, and we accuse him everything, with everything with the wrongdoings, etc. But this time, this is serious, and we don't have a clear picture yet. When we look at the generals, I'm talking about one general over 3 has been arrested, and they are accused of attempting a coup, and this represents a lot of people. It's not a minority within the army. And when you look at the profiles of these generals, you can see some of them were considered close to the Erdogan's regime or AKP. Some of them were considered as ultranationalists. You can even find generals who are accused who as the masterminds behind this coup, have been arrested 5 years ago within the Ergenekon and Balyoz cases. So, and we consider these cases as a Gulenist, conspiracy against the army. So, 5 years ago, they were the Kemalist victim of the Gulen, and they became Gulenists. They became Gulenists today just because they did this at the coup.
So you're saying it's a mix. You're saying it's a mixed bag of people arrested.
It's a mixed balance of people. The common point, I think, that there was a group of generals who were against this rapprochement, this sort of alliance between the army and Erdogan, which we've seen clear evidences of this since 2 years. But there was a division within the army regarding to this rapprochement with Erdogan, and also we see a picture. For example, this is more and more clear. The coup plotters were much more aligned to the NATO alliance, and the generals we replaced them were known. Some of them were known ultranationalists. But I think that the real problem is not what they believe, or ultranationalists, Kemalists, Gulenists, etc. We can have all of them within this group of coup plotters. But I think the real question here is the foreign policy of Turkey. Turkey will stay within the Western alliance, and the army, the Turkish army, will be an ally to Erdogan's regime.
You're saying there could be Gulenists in there as well as a bunch of other people.
Of course, you have to have an investigation. Yeah. I can't clear that out.
Sure.
Nobody can clear that. For Erdogan, it was clear. In the 10th minute, he accused Gulen.
Marc Pierini, we're going to listen now to the Justice Minister. See if you're convinced by his accusation that it's obviously Gulen who's behind it.
There is some evidence of cleric Gulen orchestrating the coup, but there doesn't even need to be this proof to show that he was involved. Just as the sun is burning us here, the coup also hurt and burnt everyone.
There doesn't even need to be proof. Marc Pierini, your reaction?
The last person on this debate to be able to make a judgment on the Gulen movement. It's a totally secretive movement. You cannot learn about their governance, their finance, who is a member. So we just don't know anything about them. I think what is interesting here is that obviously soldiers were involved in this failed coup, but hours after the coup was aborted, a vast list of people. You have mentioned 20,000. I was reading just before this show, 45,000 in total. have been arrested, suspended, sacked, etc., etc. So obviously lists were already there as prepared for a cleansing operation. From a Western point of view, what matters here is the process by which some of these people will be tried, judged, condemned, and it has to be a due process with evidence. But that's only a foreigner's point of view. We have to also admit that Turkey is in shock. This came very close to doing a lot of damage to the top of the state. When an army bombards the parliament building, soldiers kill police and vice versa, it is a very big shock for any country. So there has to be a sort of restoration of the order. And what Western countries, you've heard President Obama, you've heard Chancellor Merkel, you've heard President Hollande and the EU institutions here in Brussels, all they ask is a due process.
All they ask is a due process. Lots of reactions coming in on the hashtag F24 debate. Going forward, says one viewer on Twitter, nothing will change. Erdogan was already a strong leader. He will keep going to be a strong leader. I want to get back to that point that Marc Pirini made and just put it to you. Galip Dalai, we've seen a wholesale sacking or revocation of teaching licenses this Tuesday. We have seen university deans told to resign. What's going to happen as far as that goes? Is there going to be a wholesale purge of the education system, for instance?
Well, no doubt Turkey is going through extraordinary times. I mean, just within a matter of hours, over 200 Turkish citizens was killed, or 1,500 people were injured, a huge damage, a huge terror campaign. So Turkey is going through extraordinary times. And the process has not completed yet. Still, like there is, in some places, still this resistance is continuing. In some places, like the military has not surrendered yet. So the process is still continuing. Okay, the level of the danger has been reduced, but it hasn't been eradicated. So therefore, we are going through an extraordinary process, and you can be sure that Turkey is going to take extraordinary measures as well too. One of the things that we have to keep in mind when we talk about the Gulenists, we are not just talking about this group, just the presence of this group within the army. The Gulenists is a wide network, and particularly has a significant presence within the state structure, within the police, within the judiciary, within the education system, within the military. And we should also keep something else in mind. It is not only the governing AK Party, it is almost every single segment of society in Turkey has had grievances vis-a-vis the Gülenist shady presence within the society. Keep it from the Kurdish activists to the Kemalists.
All right, Galip Dalai, I'm going to have to cut you off because we have to take a very quick break. We're going to pick up on those points when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.